I've been loving you too long to stop now.
Cleveland, Ohio, December 1967. Otis Redding and his touring band are en route to Wisconsin for the last gig of the weekend. They're going to travel by plane, despite a bad weather forecast.
My love is growing strong.
They told him not to fly. And Otis had not missed many gigs in his life. He always took pride in the fact that he never missed a gig unless it was absolutely necessary. His last comment before he got on that plane was, "I gotta go make that dollar," which was the expression that he always used, "Gotta make that dollar."
By 1967, Otis Redding was on top of the world. Years of struggle on the grueling small-town circuit had finally paid off. He'd won a vast new army of fans across Europe, and he'd been embraced by the hippie love crowd at the Monterey Pop Festival. He was the king of soul.
Otis established what really could be defined as the very essence of soul music.
As our fair grows old, ooh, I'm loving you. Oh,
That essence was distilled at a Memphis recording studio called Stax, a refuge for black and white musicians in the bitterly divided South.
It was like an oasis in the desert. It put together black musicians, white musicians, black business people, white business people for a common purpose.
In a corner of America where blacks were still expected to know their place, common purpose was a dangerous idea, but it had begun to gain momentum. The Stax studio was a fragile experiment in integration with implications far beyond music. Otis had taken Southern soul to a mass audience, both black and white, but he would never make it to Wisconsin. The trail he had blazed for 5 glorious years would end in tragedy on a foggy December night.
He was at the top of the staircase, and I'm at the bottom of it, and I looked up, and I said, "All right, well, have a good trip." I said, "See you Monday, huh?" And he said, "Yeah, Red, see you Monday." And boom, that was the last time I saw him.
This is the story of how black and white musicians came together as equals to create Southern soul, a music that would inspire a generation. Memphis, Tennessee, the true crossroads of American music, where blues and country collided to give birth to the rock and roll of Elvis Presley. By the early 60s, the melting pot was about to bubble over again.
If you weren't in Memphis in the 60s, then you missed it. You missed a big party. It went on for at least 10 years. There was music everywhere. All the clubs had live music. Memphis was blessed and always has been blessed, as a lot of river towns are, with a lot of music people.
Now Memphis was going to produce some of the grittiest, most passionate music the world had ever heard. Because this is where Otis Redding would find his soul.
Otis was a power force, coming from a little town of White Oak, Georgia, and who was singing in the little clubs in Macon, Georgia, which was big time for him. His power came from his family, from his roots, from living on that farm, from working on that farm, being born on that farm. He had to get away from all of that, and he broke away spiritually in song.
Otis would have to make a break for the city if he was to make it as a singer.
I love a chicken, baby. Shouting mama lover.
In 1962, Otis Redding drove guitarist Johnny Jenkins to Memphis. They were heading for Stax, a fledgling recording studio where Jenkins had been offered the chance to record and maybe get himself a deal. Stax was founded by brother and sister Jim Stewart and Estelle Axton. They set up shop in an old movie theater and combined the first two letters of their surnames to christen the company Stax.
It was a magical place because everybody was friendly and happy and nobody was professional. There wasn't a good Jew in the bunch. Nobody knew nothing. We had Jim Stewart was an accountant at the bank and played fiddle on the weekends.
Stax had an open door policy that anybody could just wander in off the street. If they could play or write or whatever, they were welcome.
Al Jackson and Steve Cropper were young musicians helping out at the studio the day Otis showed up.
I saw this big guy get out on the driver's side and get the car keys and come around back and unlock the trunk. I just passed it off as he was what you would call a roadie in these days. So we went into the studio and listened to what Johnny had. And Al Jackson came down and he said, there's a guy that's with Johnny that just keeps bugging me about listening to him sing. Got him down to the piano and he started, "These arms of mine, they are lonely." And man, my hair stood up like that. I looked at Al Jackson, I went, "Get Jim."
These arms are mine. They are lonely.
Jim went, "We gotta get this on tape. We gotta get this on tape." I mean, he was like nervous about it, you know. All of the attention went towards Otis. Unfortunately for Johnny Jenkins, he should have left Otis at home, I guess.
These Arms of Mine was Otis Redding's first release for the company. And although only a minor hit, his pleading tone struck a chord with Jim Stewart and the musicians at the studio.
They recognized that Otis was very rare. He was a diamond in the rough.
These arms of mine, they are
The song basically is an expression of honesty, that depth of feeling that was so common among African Americans in the South. Music provided the outlet, the uninhibited source for expression.
What is so remarkable about These Arms of Mine is the extent to which it presents the unvarnished Otis Redding style, which is like a begging style. I mean, a crying style.
let them you. Oh, how grateful I will be.
The record itself took months before it broke. It took 9 months to break. Then he got on a roll in the studio, and everything Otis would touch was magical.
Just like the arrival of Otis, everything that happened at Stax owed a great deal to chance. The original aim for the label had been to produce country music.
Jim Stewart and Estelle Axton had no idea what they were doing at the outset and fell into the recording of rhythm and blues and then soul music purely by accident.
Cheap rent had brought Jim Stewart and Estelle Axton to the heart of a black neighborhood. But they discovered a goldmine of pure musical talent on their doorstep.
I don't think there was such a great knowledge of what soul music was on Jim's part or anyone else's part. But there certainly was a beauty in Estelle Axton who wanted to just embrace any and everyone who wanted to come in, and she wanted to be sure they were checked out.
Stax Records was an oddity. It was like an oasis in the desert. The people who made it work were both black and white, and became friends because of what they did. It was wonderful. But right outside those doors, it stopped.
Memphis, like most of the South, was deeply segregated. Even the bars and clubs were divided. But the sounds of the city were less easy to contain.
There's one thing in surrogating society, but you cannot surrogate something like the airwaves.